So this HOA treasurer parked her $60,000 BMW inside my garage without asking, and then fined me $200 for leaving my garage door open overnight. I dragged myself home after a 12-hour electrical shift, my work boots crunching on gravel, shoulders aching, head buzzing. And there it was, her pearl-white luxury SUV sitting dead center in my garage, right where my tools were supposed to be. The smell of her fancy leather seats mixed with motor oil and sawdust. Her car alarm chirped like it was proud of itself. When I asked her to move it, she waved some fake emergency parking rule in my face and told me I needed to learn community cooperation. 6 weeks later, I owned her house, and she was sobbing into my voicemail, begging me not to foreclose while the entire neighborhood watched. But before I explain exactly how her illegal power grab destroyed her financially, let me ask you something. Have you ever been pushed around by some petty authority figure just because they could? Drop your location in the comments. I want to see how many of us are done being bullied. My name is Jake Morrison. 2 years ago, I thought buying my first house in Willowbrook Estates meant I'd finally made it. I was 34, an electrician, and a single dad to my 8-year-old daughter, Emma, who stayed with me every other weekend. I spent 6 years saving every overtime dollar. Ramen noodles felt like luxury meals, all of it just to afford a modest 3-bedroom house. But the real prize was the 2-car garage. That garage was my dream, my workshop, my safe space. The smell of sawdust mixed with copper wire, my grandfather's old wooden workbench, scarred and solid, with tools that had built real things, space to build Emma's treehouse without someone measuring my fence line. I had recently inherited a small amount of money from Grandpa, too, which meant real home improvements were finally possible. Every evening, the garage door closed with a deep mechanical rumble, sealing off my little world from the suburban show outside. Willowbrook Estates looked perfect on paper. Middle-class homes built between 2015 and 2018, young families, retirees, $180 a month HOA fee for basic upkeep. Simple rules, or so I thought. Keep your lawn neat, don't paint your house neon green, work hard, mind your own business. Then I met Brenda Whitfield, and I learned simple was never part of her plan. Brenda was 52. She drove a BMW that cost more than my yearly income. She lived in the corner McMansion with a circular driveway that screamed superiority. She was the HOA treasurer, which she treated like a royal title. Her husband, Brad, worked in city planning. She mentioned that fact like it was a loaded weapon. She was always perfectly styled, designer clothes, fake smile, eyes that judged everything. The kind of woman who measured grass height while pretending to walk her tiny purse dog. My first run-in with Brenda happened 6 months after I moved in. I was installing security lights for Mrs. Chen, an elderly neighbor who'd been scared after a break-in nearby. I was halfway up a ladder when I felt a presence behind me. Click, click, expensive heels on concrete, a heavy cloud of perfume. "Excuse me," she said, clutching a clipboard like it was law itself. "I don't see any permits posted for this electrical work." I explained that outdoor lighting didn't require permits. I showed her my state license. I even offered to explain the safety code. She barely glanced at it. "I'll need to verify that with my husband. We can't have questionable contractors hurting property values." The way she said questionable made my stomach turn. Like 12 years of licensed work and calloused hands meant nothing because I drove a work truck instead of a luxury SUV. That moment was my real welcome to Willowbrook. Over the next year and a half, Brenda turned HOA enforcement into her personal sport. She patrolled at dawn with a notebook, writing citations for bikes left on driveways or trash cans put away 11 minutes late. She focused hardest on people who didn't fit her vision.
Mrs. Chen got fined for inappropriate decorations, which were memorial wind chimes for her late husband, a veteran. Tom Rodriguez got hit with fines for parking his work truck in his own driveway because it damaged residential appearance. Whenever Brenda's heels clicked down the sidewalk, kids disappeared indoors. Curtains twitched. Everyone hoped she'd keep walking.
Emma once asked me why the mean, pretty lady always looked like she smelled something bad. Kids see everything. I stayed under her radar by following every rule exactly. Grass trimmed to 2.75 inches, work van parked down the street, no excuses. Until that Tuesday evening. I came home at 7:30 after installing emergency backup power at a medical clinic, one of those jobs where mistakes cost lives. My boots felt like cement. My shoulders burned. All I wanted was a cold drink and to check on Emma's treehouse. Instead, I found Brenda's BMW parked dead center inside my garage. Not half in, not to the side, perfectly centered, leaving barely 6 inches on each side, close enough to scratch my workbench if she opened a door. I stood there frozen, holding the garage remote, wondering if exhaustion had finally broken my brain. The car alarm chirped once, confident, smug. I walked to the front door and found Brenda sitting in my patio chair like she owned the place. Perfect outfit, phone in hand, zero concern. "Excuse me," I said calmly, "there's a car in my garage." She smiled. "Oh, Jake, my driveway is being sealed tomorrow. Emergency situation. HOA emergency parking allows temporary use of available spaces." I pulled out my phone and opened the HOA bylaws. "I don't see any emergency parking rule here." She stood up and smoothed her skirt. "I'm reviewing updates to the bylaws. Consider this a test run for community cooperation." That's when I did something she wasn't expecting. I started recording. "So you're admitting this rule doesn't exist yet, and you're using my private garage without permission?" Her face changed instantly. "You can't record me." "Yes, I can," I said. "We're on my property, and this is a one-party consent state." She reached for my phone. I stepped back. "Brad will hear about this," she snapped. "Good," I said. "I'd love to hear city planning's position on fake HOA rules." The next morning, I found an HOA violation notice taped to my door. "Garage left open overnight. Visual blight. $75 fine, escalating to $200. There was a handwritten note. "Maybe next time you'll be more cooperative. B." I called my friend Derek, a real estate attorney. He laughed when I read it. "She fined you for a problem she caused. That's harassment and abuse of authority." He told me to pull the HOA formation documents from the county. During lunch, I went to the courthouse. Old paper, burnt coffee smell, filing cabinets older than me. And that's when I found something that made me smile. Meanwhile, Brenda was busy emailing the entire neighborhood about security concerns and enhanced enforcement. Emma called that night. "Daddy, is my treehouse still happening?" "We might have to work around some problems," I said. "The mean lady again?" "Yeah, but Daddy's learning how to fight smart." Friday morning was worse. Her BMW was still in my garage, and now there was a black Mercedes next to it. My electrical supply cabinet had been shoved back and locked with a new padlock. My tools were moved. A sticky note sat on my grandfather's vise. "Temporary relocation for client staging. Community cooperation appreciated. BW." I felt rage rise in my throat. But instead of grabbing my bolt cutters, I called the police non-emergency line. Officer Martinez arrived and documented everything. "This looks like harassment," he said. "Property deed beats HOA rules every time." He told Brenda to remove her vehicles or it would become criminal. That afternoon, I went to the county survey office. The clerk pulled up my lot map and smiled. "Oh, honey, you own 18 inches more than the HOA thinks. Your garage is fully on your property." The HOA had been using outdated maps. I walked out knowing Brenda had made a massive mistake. By Sunday, she was melting down online. Neighbors started pushing back, screenshots appeared, stories came out. Monday night, she called an emergency HOA meeting. That's where things really started to fall apart.
Monday evening arrived with the kind of tension you usually only see before a storm. I walked into the Willowbrook Elementary cafeteria for the so-called emergency HOA meeting and immediately noticed how empty it was. Folding tables, cheap plastic chairs made for second graders, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. Brenda sat in the middle wearing a navy blazer like she was about to run a courtroom. On either side of her were two people I barely recognized: Harold, a retired guy who nodded at everything she said, and Patricia, whose lips looked permanently trained to disapprove. "Where's everyone else?" I asked, pulling out my phone. "They couldn't make it," Brenda said smoothly, "but we have a quorum." I hit record. She slid a document across the table. 3 pages of legal-sounding nonsense claiming the HOA could fine residents retroactively for garage usage patterns and visual disruption. $800, 60 days backdated. "You're fining me for using my own garage?" I asked. "Community standards affect everyone," Harold said, nodding like a bobblehead. That's when I remembered something Derek drilled into me years ago. HOA board members are only protected if their actions are covered by insurance. Once they step outside that coverage, they are personally liable. "I'd like to see your HOA insurance policy," I said calmly, "the one that covers these enforcement actions." Silence. Brenda's smile cracked. "Those documents are under review." "No problem," I said, pulling out copies from my folder. "I already got them from the county." I laid everything out on the table. According to the policy, board members were not covered for personal business use of HOA authority. No coverage for staging homes, no coverage for harassment, no coverage for falsified violations. Then I showed the financial record. $23,000 in fake expenses. Storm cleanup billed but done by the city for free. Landscaping consultations billed through Brenda's private company. Emergency tree removal charged even though the city handled it. Her face went pale. Then I pulled out Brad's emails. Emails obtained through public records requests. Emails where he talked about targeting working-class homeowners. Emails discussing using HOA pressure to force sales. Emails talking about my property specifically. "Single father, corner lot, high development potential," I read aloud. Harold's mouth dropped open. Patricia gasped. Brenda stood so fast her chair fell over. "This meeting is over," she snapped. But it was already too late. The next morning, Derek called. "Jake," he said, "you just walked into something big." Brenda had pending complaints on her real estate license. She was underwater on her mortgage. Brad was already under ethics review at city planning, and now my evidence connected everything. They weren't just bullies, they were running a scheme. They pressured homeowners with fake violations, forced quick sales, flipped properties using insider zoning knowledge. Mrs. Chen's wind chimes, Tom's work truck, my garage. It was all intentional. Derek told me to do something unexpected. "Disappear," he said. "Take vacation. Go off the grid." So I did. Emma and I went camping. No cell service, no internet. And that's when Brenda completely lost control. Tom stayed behind to watch the house. Cameras installed, motion sensors, cloud storage. Day 1, Brenda tried to pry open my garage. Day 2, she called a locksmith claiming an HOA emergency. Locksmith left. Day 3, she brought a city electrical inspector under false pretenses. Inspector shut her down. All recorded. Then she tried to bribe Tom.
Cash, promises, threats. Then she hired a guy with bolt cutters. Police arrived. Arrest made. And then the state attorney general showed up. Search warrants, news cameras, boxes of records carried out of Brenda's house and office. Brad arrested at work. Emails, spreadsheets, target lists. Dozens of homeowners across multiple counties. Brenda called me 17 times while I was camping. Voicemails went from angry to desperate to full breakdown, begging me to stop everything. When Emma and I came home, the neighborhood looked like a crime scene mixed with a block party. News vans, neighbors cheering. The HOA board was dissolved. Brenda's license revoked. Brad fired and banned from government work. Federal fraud charges. Civil lawsuit settlement. I used my settlement money to create a property rights defense fund. Mrs. Chen became our documentation expert. Tom joined the new HOA board. Transparency rules passed. Property values went up. Emma's treehouse was built 18 inches past where Brenda claimed my land ended, because it was always ours. 6 months later, Brenda and Brad pled guilty. Prison time. Their house sold at auction. And all of it started because one woman parked her car in the wrong garage. If you've ever dealt with HOA abuse, power-hungry boards, or fake authority figures, share your story in the comments. Subscribe to HOA Prime Stories and ring the bell, because next week I'm telling you about the time a city inspector tried to condemn a house for having too many books, and how one librarian fought back with a law nobody expected. Because bullies only win when good people stay quiet. And Emma's treehouse rules still apply. No mean people allowed.